Shalom Aleichem and welcome back everyone as we are preparing for Shabbat, Parshat Vayakhel-Pekudei, Parshat HaChodesh, Shabbat Mevarchim, as we're coming close to the Chodesh Nisan, the Zman Geula. Let us take a look at a few lessons that we can learn from Parshat Vayakhel-Pekudei. The first, before we can even begin, we really have to look at what Parshat Vayakhel-Pekudei is all about. If you go through the Parshiot, you go through the two Parshas that we're going to read, you have 122 Psukim in Parshat Vayakhel. And if you take a look at it, it seems to be discussing the exact same things that we discussed in Parshat Terumah. How to build a Mishkan, how to build a Kalim for the Mishkan. It's the same exact idea. And then you take a look in Parshat Pekudei, which is another 92 Psukim. And this one deals with the clothing of the Kohanim mostly. Exactly that the same Parshat Tetzaveh dealt with. So we have 214 total Psukim that are pretty much reviewing everything we already learned in Parshat Terumah and Parshat Tetzaveh. Vayakhel-Pekudei seems on the surface unnecessary. You know, a lot of times the Gemara will learn from an extra letter, a missing letter, an extra this, an extra that, so many halachot. And all of a sudden here we have 214 seemingly extra psukim. There must be some very important lesson there. In the Vihigadata of Yaakov Galinsky, he brings a famous story about this grandmother. There was one grandmother, a village woman. She was very poor and she had many grandchildren. Everyone was poor. And she one day went outside and she was davening to Hashem. Hashem, please help me. Bono Shalom, look how poor I am. Please give me something for my grandchildren, to give them something to eat, something this, something. And she finishes praying and she looks down and she finds there's an egg right in front of her. She's so excited. She comes home and she brings it home to her children, her grandchildren, and they see it and they say, "Oh, Baruch Hashem, now we'll have something to eat." And she says, "I know you're excited, you see the egg, but we have to have bigger plans for this egg."
Chicken coop.
That's right. We're going to take it to the neighbor, and we're going to let another chicken, another hen to sit on it, and hopefully this egg will hatch. And then they said, "Oh, then we'll have chicken soup." And she's like, "No, we're going to let that chicken grow, and that chicken's going to have eggs." And they said, "Oh, then we're going to have tons of eggs." And she says, "Yes, but we're not going to eat those eggs. We're going to let those eggs hatch as well, and we're going to have a whole farm of chickens and eggs, and then we'll be able to sell it for livestock, for cows and for sheep and stuff like that. Then we'll have milk and we'll have wool and we'll have everything." And they all understood the grandmother's big master plan. And as excited as they were, she was holding the egg and she throws it up. And instead of catching it, she misses and the egg falls on the ground. And there's nothing left of that egg. You see, says Rav Pam, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, Parshat Vayakhel-Pekudei is so important. You know why? Because in Parshat Terumah Tetzaveh we had grand plans. We had plans to build a Mishkan. We had plans to build, to make the clothing for the Kohanim. But what happens in the majority of people's lives? They plan so good. They have all sorts of ideas, and nothing comes through. And so Parshat Vayakhel-Pekudei comes and tells us the plans that they did happened. And that is the Hidush. That is the novelty. That's the idea, to tell us that you're taking plans and making them happen. Because you look at our own lives. Every Yom Kippur, we come around and we say, this is going to be Hashanah. This is going to be the year. This is going to be the year. I'm going to change the year. I'm going to do this. This year is going to change. And our people make plans from here to tomorrow. And there is nothing. Nothing changed. Everything stays the same. We need to change. We need to learn from Parshat Pekudei, Vayakhel-Pekudei, how to take plans and make it happen. In Parshat Terumah Tetzaveh, it's Ve'asita, and you shall make. In Parshat Vayakhel-Pekudei, it's Vaya'as, and they made it a reality. So the question now is, for us, how do you make reality? How do you make it actually happen? Says a pasuk in Mishlei, have you seen a man with zrizut, with alacrity in his work? And the Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, Kuf Daled Amabed says, this is David HaMelech. He worked very fast. What was the story? David HaMelech called the Navi, Natan, and he told Natan the Navi, I'm living in a palace, and Hashem, he doesn't have the Beit HaMikdash. I would like to build a Beit HaMikdash. And Natan, without consulting Hashem, says, why not? Great idea. Go for it. That night, Natan, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, comes to Natan HaNavi and tells him, go now to David and tell him to stop building the Beit HaMikdash. And the question is, why that night? In the middle of the night, Natan has to get up and go. And so the Gemara says, you know why? Because David, Mahirhu, he was a fast guy. You told me he can do it? He's doing it already. He's not waiting around. It's already done. Some people are like this. Some people, and this is what we have to learn. You have a plan, you have to go ahead and do that plan. Here, Rabbi Rosner says that he brings from the Hidah, Divrei Hazal, they say as follows. Tzadikim omrim me'at v'osim harbeh. Tzadikim, they say a little and they do a lot. At my work at Northwell, they have like nice quote sayings, and one of the sayings, I don't remember the quote exactly, but it says, let your success be the noise. Meaning, a lot of times people talk about plans, I'm going to make, I'm going to do it, nothing happens. They make so much noise, and nothing happened. Let the success be the noise. That's what he says over here. He says, you see it from the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, all the Chacham Lev, all those wise at heart, Yavo'u, they come, Vaya'asu, and they should do. That's a Chacham Lev, that's a wise person, that's a smart person. That's the guy who's going to do something done. He has the plan, he goes ahead and he does it. Just do it, right? That's the Nike, right? Check, just do it. That's what we got to do. We have to go and do it. Once you know it's the right thing to do, we have to get up and do it. We have to know that there are many, many things that can stop us. But if you get up and you do it right away, you'll be a lot more successful than not. Here in the Vihigadato, he says one more interesting ma'aseh, one interesting story. That when Benayahu captured Ashmedai, right? Ashmedai is the king of the demons. He needed him to get the Shamir warm, okay? And they were passing by, and they saw someone, a fortune teller, sitting on top of a treasure. He didn't know he was sitting on top of a treasure. And people were coming over to him and asking him for advice, and he was giving people advice. And Ashmedai was laughing. So Benayahu said, why are you laughing? He says, there's this guy sitting on top of a treasure, and he's telling everybody else advice what's going to happen. Meanwhile, he himself doesn't know that right where he's sitting on top of a gold mine, and he doesn't even know. And he's meanwhile giving other people advice. And he says, he says, that's all of us. He said, that's all of us. We're sitting on so much ability and capability, so much strength and talents and stuff that we can do, and yet we don't even know about it. And meanwhile, we're telling everybody else what to do. All right? So this is the first lesson from Parshat Vayakhel-Pekudei. The second lesson that we need to get into, the second idea of this week's Parsha, is that there's a Rashi, Masechet Ta'anit, on Daf Het, where it talks about, come and see how great people of faith are. People who have emunah. If one trusts in a weasel and a pit, how much more so if one trusts in Hashem? That's the Gemara. And Rashi says, what happened? There was a young boy who promised a girl that he would marry her. And she's questioned, who would be our witnesses? So he said, there's a weasel here, and there was a pit here. There's going to be our witnesses. Eventually, this boy forgot about his promise and married someone else. And he had children. And his two children died tragically. One died by falling down into a pit, and the other was killed by a weasel. And when this happened, he remembered his promise. And that the Gemara says, because they said that the weasel and the pit are going to be the witnesses, and they believed in that, that's why this happened. Or Chaim Shulevitz says, what do you mean comparing emunah and Hashem to comparing it to a weasel and a pit? Says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz. But since they truly placed their belief in these two things, they gave it power. Therefore, what the Gemara is telling us is that one can strengthen and empower something by believing them. How much more so if you believe in Hashem? Hashem has the power to do everything. So if you have more emunah in Hashem, the more so everything will happen. Right? This is part of what Moshe Rabbeinu said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when the Jews were sinning. He said, did I give birth to them? Why? It doesn't make a difference to give birth or not. Because children believe in the father. Right? The father and mother are going to get things done from them, even though the parents might not believe in themselves so they can get it done. But since a child believes that the parents can take care of them, the parents end up being able to take care of them. So Moshe says, I didn't give birth to them. So they don't have that belief in me. Right? Like one of the Gedolei Hador, one of the Rosh Hashivas, a lot of his students are going to some Hasidic Rebbes. So he asked them, why are you going to Hasidic Rebbes? He said, we're going to Hasidic Rebbes because they do moifsim, they do miracles. So the Rosh Hashiva said, if you believed in me, that I can do miracles like the Rebbe, I would also be able to do miracles. Where you place your belief in. How is this connected to this week's Parsha? In this week's Parsha...
How about we believe in you?
Shkoyach. In this week's Parsha, I'm going to start doing some magic now. Okay, no. It says that the Kol Chacham Lev, all the wise people, are going to come over and start... They're going to come and do the job. And the question the Ramban says is, how do they know how to do all this craftsmanship, all this artistry work, all this type of fine skills? They were slaves in Egypt. They weren't being taught how to do these things.
Big hands.
Where do they learn to do all this fine, delicate work? So the Ramban answers. It says that they believed in themselves. They believed that they can do it, and that's why they were a Chacham Lev. They had it in their heart that they can do it. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to them. Self-belief. That's the relation. Okay? The idea is if you can believe in yourself that you can do it, then you can do it. But if you don't have that belief, you can't do it. We're going to read the Lashon from over here. Every man whose heart inspired him came. The Ramban says, whose heart inspired him refers to the craftsman who built the Mishkan. None of the Jews ever learned the skills needed for these very meticulous and demanding tasks. However, each artisan found in his nature that he knew how to do his work, and his heart was inspired to fulfill the word of Hashem. There is a hidden reservoir of potential in every Jewish person. If he wants to do something l'shem shemayim, he has the power to do it. Right? The Gemara says that every Jew, Gemara Berachot says every Jew is compared to a star. What's the comparison to the star? If you look from here and you look at the stars, they look very tiny. You can't even see it with all the pollution in New York City, right? But if the closer and closer you go up to the star, what do you see? It's gigantic. It's brilliant. It's so light. That's every single Jew. Every single Jew has that ability. That's why you have to really believe in yourself that you can do things and you'll go places. All right. Here he brings Rabbi Yaakov Bender. He brings about that he was one of the founders of the Flatbush Hatzalah. And he says he remembers exactly how Hatzalah started. Listen to this, I will tell you. There was a Jew from Williamsburg, Hasidic Jew from Williamsburg, Herschel Weber. He founded Hatzalah. Why? One day, Rav Herschel saw there was a Jew in Williamsburg who collapsed. And they called the ambulance to come. And the ambulance took a very long time. And this Jew died. Rav Herschel right there and said, I'm going to make a difference. No longer are we going to wait so long for an ambulance to come. He decided, and this man wasn't someone who was medically inclined or anything like that. He decided we're going to make a volunteer ambulance that will come and respond quickly. He took a course in CPR. He learned some other techniques. He purchased a couple of oxygen tanks, some other equipment, got a few friends, and they started Hatzalah, and Hatzalah was born, and today you have Hatzalah everywhere because one man, his heart inspired him to make a difference. And he got up, and everyone told him, don't do it, you can't do it, it's this, it's that, it's that, it's this. And he did it. And Baruch Hashem, today, where would we be without Hatzalah? Right? How much more comfortable we know if we call Hatzalah today. I think the art school just put out a book in 90 seconds, right? Hatzalah, their response all around the world. It's an amazing idea. I can just say for myself, once when I was living back in Regal Park, we had to call Hatzalah for one of my children, and it was a Yom Tov afternoon, so I was taking a nap, and I woke up. One of the other children woke me up, and it was a very scary situation, so I took out the phone, I quickly called Hatzalah. But at the time Hatzalah came, I still didn't even have my clothes on. I didn't have my Shabbat. Am I still with my PJs? Because they came so quick. I didn't even have a chance to change yet. Baruch Hashem. But how did it happen? It happened because one man, his heart inspired him, and Hashem gave him the kohot to do it. How important to have self-belief, to have self-esteem, and how far that can take us. Let's look at one final lesson from this week's Parshat. Abotai, there's something very important in these last few weeks. We saw that while we were building the Mishkan, over and over again, Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling through Moshe how we have to be very careful with Shabbat. That we still have to keep Shabbat. That even though we're doing something holy, it doesn't override Shabbat. Shabbat is very important. The Bet Yosef in Orach Chaim 290, he quotes this pasuk from this week's parasha. It says, "Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael," and the pasuk will continue. "Bayom hashivii elachem kodesh, Shabbat Shabbaton laHashem." The Bet Yosef, he quotes a midrash that says, Hakadosh Baruch Hu says to Klal Yisrael, if you assemble every Shabbat in the shul and to the Beit Midrash and you learn Torah, I will consider it as if you made me the king of the world. That means if you come to shul and you pray on daven on Shabbat, you pray and learn on Shabbat, it's as if you're saying to Hashem, you're king of the world. Va'atem edai ne'um Hashem va'ani el, says the pasuk. From this, they are authorized at every place in exile. They gather in shuls to learn on Shabbat day, says the Bet Yosef. On Shabbat day, you're supposed to learn because this is what it means you believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We know that although Shabbat is one of the 613 mitzvot, it's not just one of the 613 mitzvot. It's a testimony that we're believing in Hashem. The Chazal tell us in Bereshit Rabbah that Shabbat came before Hashem and said, Hashem, every day of the week, we'll have to go into this one day in the future, what this means, but every day of the week has a partner. Sunday has Monday, Tuesday has Wednesday, Thursday has Friday, and I, Shabbat, I'm the odd one out. I don't have a partner. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say to Shabbat? Knesset Yisrael. The Jewish people are your partner. The Jewish people is partners with Hashem, with Shabbat. That means you have to have like a relationship you have with your partner. You have to have a relationship with Shabbat. That means you have to really treat Shabbat very special. The Talmud Yerushalmi says, Shabbat and Yom Tov were given only in order to learn Torah. There's special relationship on Shabbat. The way that we're partners with Shabbat is through learning Torah. The Zohar says, listen to this, Rabotai. Listen to what the Zohar says. On Motzei Shabbat, when your Neshama Yetera goes back to Shemayim, it is asked, what Hidush of Torah did you learn this Shabbat? The same way you're going to have a reckoning after 120 with your Neshama. Every week, your Neshama Yetera comes out and it's asked, what Hidushei Torah you learned this Shabbat? Because that's the whole relationship with Shabbat. That's Knesset Yisrael, Shabbat, Torah. That's the way you have the relationship with it. You know, some people, unfortunately, when it comes to Shabbat, they think Shabbat is my day off. It's my day to relax. Which it is. You could relax on Shabbat. Especially now, I think it's very apropos to talk about this because the Shabbat's getting longer. Right? Shabbats get longer, people think they have more time to relax on Shabbat. But we really have to know what it means, a Shabbat. We'll say over a story from Yaakov Galinsky, it's a mashal. And this mashal, I think, will make it very clear of how one should be spending the Shabbat. There was a king that on his day of coronation, he decided that he wanted his anniversary of when he became king. He decided that he was going to give a gift to the people. And he said, anyone who comes will get whatever they ask for, I'll give them. And his advisor says, "Lalo, you're going to be out of all your money. You're not going to have nothing left." So they said, "Why don't you do it for 1 hour? When anyone comes for 1 hour, whatever they want, you give them." He says, "Okay, we'll do it for 1 hour." And he went and he put signs everywhere. And you could just imagine a long line that came to the palace. And everybody's there waiting, camping out, days in advance. And finally the time came, the hour came. And all of a sudden everybody's starting to move over. Everyone's moving to the side, letting someone pass. People in the front can't believe it. Why is everyone letting people pass? And then they themselves move over. What happened? It was a leper. Someone who is very diseased. He has a very bad disease that can go off to everyone. No one wants to go next to him. So they let him come forward. He gets to the front of the line. And the soldiers, the guards of the palace see him. They take him, they bring him into the showers, they hose him down, the hazmat, they clean him off, they put him on new clothing, and they bring him to the king. And you can see on him all these lesions, all these scars. He looks very bad. So he comes to the king. And the king says, "No, you're here at the time. You have this hour to ask. What is your request?" So this man says to the king, "Listen, I'm a leper. No one comes to me. No one talks to me. I live all alone. I don't even have money. I don't have food. I go and I live off people's garbages. I have no pleasure in this world at all. Except for one little pleasure. You know what that pleasure is? When I scratch my lesions. When I scratch them, for that second it feels good. Although then it bleeds and it opens and it's more problems. But for that second it feels good." He says, "King, I can scratch all my boils and all my lesions and everything I can scratch, but I can't get my back. I can't get my back. My request is, make me a stick, a scratching stick. Make me a scratching stick. Let me get a scratching stick so I can scratch my back, so I can have hana, I can have some pleasure in the back." So the king says to the scribe, "Write it down, scratching stick for this man." And the scribe, as he's writing it, he starts to laugh. So the leper says, "Hey, why are you laughing at me? King, he's laughing at me. Chutzpah, it's not nice, he's being rude." And the king says to the scribe, "Why are you laughing?" The scribe says, I'm not laughing at him, but how foolish is this guy? He's standing in front of the king. He can request anything he wants. He can request for medicine. He can request for the best doctors. He can request to be cured. He can request for money. He can request for food. And yet he requests for a back scratcher. How dumb can he be? What foolishness is this? Says Rav Yaakov Galinsky. Says Rav Yaakov Galinsky, Zecher Tzadik Libracha. And what about us? Come Shabbat. Shabbat Kodesh. It's our partner. It's our relationship. It's a day that's set aside specially to learn Torah, especially for tefillah and singing zmirot and coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what do people do? Today, Baruch Hashem, there are all sorts of magazines and newspapers, the Chvot Shabbat Kodesh, and all sorts of stuff. You can sit there reading, and people are reading novels, and people do all these sorts of things, reading away, wasting their time. Shabbat Kodesh is there. If we were smart, we wouldn't go for the back scratcher, but rather we would go for the full deal. We'll get the best we can. This is our time with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to tell Hashem that you're the king. Abutai, it's incumbent upon us. Yes, it's coming longer Shabbats. And yes, it's important to have family time. And yes, you can read something also. But you have to set aside time to learn Torah. And now that the hours is longer, it has to be longer. All of a sudden, in the winter, everyone could get to shul min Shabbat 3:30, 3:45, 4 o'clock, 4:30 late. Everyone's here. Now that the clock is pushed back, Rav Reisman says, why can't you come the same time? Or at least a little bit earlier. People come last minute, right by Mincha. You have so much time beforehand that you used to come that time. Right? Now, also, scientifically, it's been proven you can't catch up, you can't make up sleep. So if you didn't sleep during the week, you can't make it up on Shabbat. It's not going to work. What you could do is get a good night's sleep, so the rest of Shabbat you can be up. But to say I'm going to, and calculate, I mean, people tell me, I didn't sleep during the week, I'm going to calculate now, I'm going to sleep X amount of hours. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And then what happens? They sleep on Shabbat day, beautiful, right? And then Motzei Shabbat, they can't sleep. So now they're fadrei and they're going all around and wasting the time and doing all sorts of nonsense because they can't sleep. So the idea is, Abotai, Shabbat Kodesh. Shabbat is our partner. Hashem set aside Shabbat for us to learn Torah on. For us to have that. On the Shema Yitirah is asked on Motzei Shabbat, what Hidush did you learn? We have to have an answer. We have to have an answer. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us the zechut to quickly review the 3 lessons. Lesson number 1 was that the Hidush of all their extra psukim that seem to be extra in Parshat Vayakhel-Pekudei is that they had plans and they got it done. And how do you get it done? As soon as you have plans, you do it. And not only do you do it, the second lesson is you actually have the power to do it. And you have to believe in yourself that you could. Because none of the people in Mitzrayim, or the Jews in Mitzrayim, learned any of the skills that were needed to build a Mishkan or to do anything. The Ramban says, how do they do it? By believing in themselves. And our third lesson is how important Shabbat Kodesh is. With this, I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Toda Rabah.